Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Bargains, written by AC1308. Ben huddled behind the tree, trying hard to not breathe out loud. Through the screen of ferns, his eyes were fixed on the old-fashioned ceramic saucer brimming with fresh raw cow's milk, set off by the home-baked cookie, only natural ingredients, perched against one side. It all sat on moss-covered tree trunk, right where the light of the full moon could spill over it. He'd done it just right, or as close to right as the stories he'd heard made it sound. Everything organic, nothing processed, no preservatives or insecticides, as little touched by cold iron as possible. Now all he had to do was wait. Time passed. The moon crept upwards into the sky. Tiny forest animals skittered here and there. Bugs chirped, frogs croaked. Something long and sinuous slithered over Ben's foot. He barely noticed. So firmly was his attention fixed on the saucer and the cookie. And then, into the beam of moonlight, fluttered something that wasn't a moth, wasn't a cricket. It was too large by far, with long translucent wings that whirred as it flew. Ben stopped breathing altogether. Once, twice, thrice, the winged creature circled the stump. Twice it paused and stared accusingly into the darkness, one of those times directly at Ben. He froze, not even blinking. It circled the stump again. The forest was so quiet that Ben could hear a train chugging along the track 15 miles away. The creature was mumbling to itself. There were two sides to what it was saying, as if it was two different people arguing with each other. Must be a trap, has to be a trap. Why must it be a trap? It's milk and cookies. Who leaves milk and cookies, man? Who sets a trap, man? It's a trap. But milk and cookies. The voice was wheedling. No milk and cookies. The creature flew off to a few yards, then dithered. Maybe a little try. Fly away if danger. It's a trap. But the voice with reason was less confident now. Just a nibble. Just a sip. Trap. It was just a whimper. The creature fluttered closer and closer, then perched on the stump, crouching next to the saucer. Now that it was still, he could see that it was about 5 inches tall with subtly inhuman proportions. Its skin was iridescent, gleaming in the moonlight, while its hair was silvery purple. He watched as it took up the cookie, needing both hands to lift the baked pastry to its tiny mouth. There was a tiny crunch as it took a bite. Then it lowered its face to the milk. Ben didn't move except for 2 fingers. There was a string hanging beside him, and he tugged on it. As the diminutive figure hoisted the cookie again, the net fell from above. Not just any net, however. This was made from hairs plucked from the tail of an elderly mare and painstakingly woven into the shape of his own hands. At each juncture was a tiny shaving of silver taken from antiques that had once belonged to his grandmother. The net drifted down as lightly as gossamer in the summertime. Perched on the stump, the tiny creature had no idea of its peril. Right up until the strand settled over it. Screeching in alarm, it tried to leap into the air, but its wings tangled in the net, and it subsided into useless struggling. Ben's joints were almost frozen solid by this time, but he forced his knees to open, and he stood up. Clumsily, he lurched towards the stump, using the tree as support. "You've eaten my food and quaffed my drink," he declared. "I hold a debt over you." The fey being ceased its struggles and glared up the human. "Man," it hissed. "Knew it was a trap." It was a trap, Ben acknowledged, and he flew right into it. He settled himself on another stump closer to the trapped creature. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what you're willing to give me to get out of it. Mick glared at him. "Man," it spat. "Traps, treacherous cheats." "That doesn't matter," snapped Ben. "You have to do what I say, or I can punish you." Silence fell briefly. Then a stick snapped, further back in the forest. A footstep sounded, then another. Ben looked wildly around, wondering who the hell would be out here at night, and how they'd snuck up on him. A stranger picked his way into the clearing, looking for all the world like a stereotypical bureaucrat. He wore a suit and tie, and his hair was neatly combed. In his hand was a briefcase, brushing off a fallen log. He sat down and looked over the bifocals at Ben. "Let's not be so hasty, he said mildly. "Certainly you have him at a disadvantage, and certainly he has eaten of your food and imbibed of your milk. There is a debt owed here, but perhaps not one as stringent as you seem to imagine." "And who the devil are you?" demanded Ben. "What are you doing here?"
"Ah, careful now," the man said, raising his hand slightly. "Names have power in places and times like this, and you do not wish to attract the wrong sort of attention, especially with voices raised in anger. A horsehair net fastened with silver will not serve to bind one such as him."
His voice was so mild, so unthreatening, that Ben felt himself relaxing. This was not an enemy. What he was, Ben wasn't sure, but he certainly posed no physical danger. "All right, then," he said, more carefully. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" The forgettable man smiled, a brief stretching of the mouth rather than any particular expression of emotion. "My name is Nigel Fotherby, of Fotherby and Blythe. I'm here to negotiate the release of your captive without any mischief done on either side." "What?" Ben couldn't understand what was going on. "I just dropped the net, just now. How did you find out? How did you get here so fast? Did you know I was going to do this?"
Cautioned Fotherby. "Temper, my dear boy. I did not know you were going to do this 1 minute ago. I was finishing up matters in our London office when I was contacted regarding this situation. Our firm handles this sort of thing on the side, you see. When I expressed my willingness to take this case on, they briefed me in detail about what had been done. I made my preparations and was deposited a short distance away so as to not startle you into precipitated action."
"All in 1 minute?" Ben found that hard to believe.
Fotherby sighed. "You really do need to pay more attention to your myths and fables. You have heard, no doubt, about weary travellers entering fairy mounds and being wined and dined all night long, only to emerge 100 years hence into the world that knows them not, or of children entering a mystic realm and living whole lifetimes before coming back to the very same moment in time. I was drawn into a region of the Feylands where hours passed for me while mere seconds ticked by here. It allowed me all the time in the world to assemble my preparations, and thus here I am."
"Oh, right."
The dry-as-dust explanation was what really sold it. Fotherby wasn't interested in convincing Ben. He merely wanted to explain matters and get along with it.
"Okay, then. So you're here to, negotiate?"
"Precisely." Fotherby offered Ben an approving smile. "You do not know this little scamp's true name, and neither will I give it to you. We will call him Thistledown for this nonce. He has been foolish and scatterbrained enough to enter your trap, as crude and as simple as it was, and so a price must needs to be paid. However, one such as he has little to give you, and you are likely to press too hard for what you believe you are owed. To this point, nobody has been harmed, and so the authorities on either side need not step in. To continue in the vein that you were pursuing, however, might lead to, unfortunate consequences."
"Authorities? Consequences?"
Ben wasn't sure he liked the sound of that. "Oh, yes," Fotherby raised his voice. "You did not know of those? Oh, dear. Have you mayhap heard of the Wild Hunt?" Ben blinked. The phrase was vaguely familiar.
"That, actually happens?"
"Not as much these days in those of yore, unfortunately," Fotherby said with a sigh. "But yes, should Oberon or one of his subordinates catch wind of one of their subjects being tormented or misused by one such as you or me, then the Wild Hunt is assembled. Fairy law reigns that night, and the unfortunate miscreants find himself drawn into the Feylands, pursued by beasts strange and eldritch through the dark that never ends, within a forest that stretches across the face of the world." He leaned forward and looked at Ben over his bifocals once more. "Believe me, dear boy, that is a fate I would not wish upon my worst enemy."
That, legitimately sounded terrifying. Ben glanced at the creature who had been temporarily named Thistledown
and considered freeing him, but decided against it. Fine, no mistreatment, but you say I'm still owed something. I want to collect it.
And thus is your due, Botherby agreed. Now, to the matter, what is your wish? I would advise against gold or other natural riches, for several reasons.
Ben frowned. Just out of curiosity, what reasons are those?
Botherby pushed his bifocals up his nose slightly, and cleared his throat in a professional fashion. Most folk who attempt to capture a member of the Fae seek out leprechauns for their famed pots of gold. What they do not understand is that a leprechaun gold is fake gold, as with all other riches they might give you, taken by force from the Fae lands by one of us. It'll fade away to nothing with the morning dew. I myself maintain a vault of it, but in the Fae lands where it will remain good and true. It allows me to buy and sell favors amongst the Fae folk, as part of my business dealings.
Right. Ben was beginning to feel as though his entire efforts to this point had been for nothing, so, no gold or jewels or other stuff I could sell. He looked challengingly at Botherby. What do you have to negotiate with, then? What can I get off Thistledown to pay the debt?
Well, that depends, Botherby said. Why did you go to all this trouble? What do you need so badly?
Ben grimaced. It's, my sister. Our parents are dead, and she's all I have in the world. She's got this really rare disease in her bones that's killing her. I don't have the money to pay for the treatments she needs, and our health insurance won't cover her for it. I was out of answers. Grandma always used to talk about the old country. So, this is my last option.
Ah, said Botherby in terms of irritated enlightenment. America, I see. Well, I have two options for you.
You do? Ben hadn't even expected one.
Certainly. Botherby's smile was dry. As I said, I am here to negotiate. Therefore, I have some leeway.
He brought the briefcase onto his lap and undid the latches with a sharp snap-snap. Lifting the lid, he turned towards Ben. Moonlight fell within, and Ben gasped. He'd never seen so much money before in one place. Bended stacks of $100 bills filling the leather case from side to side.
Holy crap, he muttered. Neither one nor the other, Botherby corrected him with the barest hint of humor, closing the lid once more. That money should pay for the treatment. Yes?
Ben grimaced. Unless they hike up the price again, sure.
Ah, yes, Botherby sighed in sympathy. Well then, we still have the second option. I can reach out to some people in the Faelands who owe me a favor, all three, and they can cure her affliction.
They can do that?
Ben felt a surge of hope. Of course. Botherby gave a humorless laugh. The Fae world works by different rules to those that govern you and I. She will be entirely cured, but be warned, she and any children she has thereafter will forever be sensitive to Fae influences. If they go wandering, they may fall through the soft spots in the world and arrive in the Faelands. They'll be returned safe and sound, of course, but perhaps 50 years later, or 50 years older.
But if that happens, Ben said, could I reach out to someone like you to get them back?
Indeed you can, clear boy.
Then it's a deal. Ben sighed and thought of all that money, but a certain cure was what he wanted. What would come later would happen.
We are agreed then. Botherby reached out, and Ben shook his hand. Delightful doing business with you, dear boy. Reaching down, the negotiator flipped the net off the impotent Fae. Be off with you, Thistledown. The next time, be more careful, won't you?
Muttering what sounded like a rude word, the tiny creature lofted into the air, clutching the cookie in both hands. It flew off into the darkness, vanishing almost immediately. Chuckling at his indignation, Ben turned to make a comment to Botherby, only to find the fastidiously dressed man had vanished altogether. Well, yeah, he probably was back in London by now. It didn't really matter. Once he found his way back to his car, he could drive into the city. He couldn't wait to see his sister's face when she found out she was cured. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the Tier 5 members, Marky, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Arnolds, Oakfield, Lord Azrakul, and it's difficult to pronounce. Thank you very much.